There is a name that no member of the Catholic Church ignores. It appears on rosaries in rural chapels, in the prayers of children and grandparents, in the most visited shrines on the planet. A name that sounds immediately Christian, immediately Marian, immediately sacred. That name is Arabic. Fátima, the Portuguese city where the Virgin Mary revealed herself 6 times in 1917, the most celebrated Marian title of the 20th century, the pilgrimage destination that receives up to 20 million pilgrims per year, bears a name born from Arabic. And not by accident, not by coincidence. The name holds a story that begins 8 centuries before the apparitions, inside a war, a princess, and a conversion that no one anticipated. It was the 12th century. The Moors ruled much of the Iberian Peninsula, while Christian armies advanced to reclaim those lands. During one of these campaigns, a knight of the Order of the Temple named Gonçalo Herminges captured a Moorish princess. Her name was Fátima. The name she carried was the same name as the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam, the most venerated figure of the religion that had held sway over that region for centuries. The knight and the princess fell in love. She chose to convert to the Christian faith. She was baptized with a new name, Oriana, and the lands where the two put down roots preserved her Arabic name forever. Fátima, the city that 800 years later would become the stage for the apparitions of the Virgin Mary, had already carried, since that medieval conversion, the name of Muhammad's daughter. But there is something in this story that runs even deeper. Muhammad once said of his daughter Fátima, "She holds the highest place in paradise after the Virgin Mary." The founder of Islam, the man who built a religion destined to become the second largest in the world, placed Mary above his own daughter, above everyone. And there is more. The Quran, the sacred book of Islam, mentions the Virgin Mary 30 times. 30. The Quran mentions no other woman by name, not even Fátima, the Prophet's daughter. On September 14, 1917, the year of the apparitions, the anti-clerical newspaper O Século published a piece about the children who claimed to have seen a lady. The journalist was not convinced. The world did not believe, and while the world questioned, the city where that lady chose to appear had long been carrying the Arabic name of the woman whom Islam placed in second position after Mary. On May 13, 1917, in this city of Arabic origin located in the heart of Portugal, 3 children tending sheep looked up at the sky and saw a light. And what happened next transformed the world in ways that no one at the time could have imagined. Providence does not act arbitrarily in the places it chooses. As we shall see, it does not choose its people at random either. Not even books, not even timelines, not even bullets. A prayer is recited by hundreds of millions of Catholics every day. It is part of the Rosary, the one that mothers teach their children, that grandparents whisper before falling asleep, and that belongs to prayer groups in every parish around the world. The prayer goes like this: "O my Jesus, forgive us our sins. Save us from the fires of hell, lead all souls to heaven, especially those most in need of your mercy." Few people know that it did not exist before 1917. A theologian did not compose this prayer. It received no approval from a council. It has no origin in a papal document. During one of the apparitions, the Virgin Mary taught this prayer to 3 shepherd children. Jacinta Marto, who was only 7 years old, was to carry this message to the world, 7 years old. Every time a faithful person prays the Rosary today, they echo what a 7-year-old girl heard in a pasture on a Sunday in July of 1917. Whenever someone speaks those words, whether in Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, Polish, or any other language, they become part of that moment. Yet there is another point of this story that is equally unknown. A year before Our Lady's apparitions in 1916, an angel appeared 3 times to those same 3 children in the region of Fátima. This angel taught them a prayer that required them to prostrate themselves completely on the ground, foreheads pressed to the earth, and repeat the following words: "My God, I believe, I adore, I hope, and I love you. I ask forgiveness for those who do not believe, do not adore, do not hope, and do not love you." Most devotees believe Fátima began on May 13, 1917. It had not yet begun. Our Lady's first apparition came a full year after the 3 children had already received guidance from an angel. They were already accustomed to submission. They had already learned to pray. They were already prepared. At one point, the angel proclaimed, "The hearts of Jesus and Mary hold designs of mercy for you. Offer to the Most High prayers and sacrifices continually." Fátima gave rise to two prayers that became part of the daily routine of millions of people around the world. Unaware that one was announced by an angel and the other by a 7-year-old child, these people typically recite both prayers from memory. How many things do we ask for in prayer without understanding their meaning? How many words do we repeat without realizing they have an origin, a moment, a child on their knees in a pasture who heard them for the very first time? That is the question Fátima raises, not only about prayers, about everything we claim as our own without questioning where it came from. Every child who went through catechism learned that Our Lady of Fátima asked for prayer and penance. She asked for the Rosary. She asked for conversion. These are correct answers. They are also incomplete answers. This stems from a request that most of the faithful mention as a phrase, but rarely interpret as a concrete demand. In her third apparition on July 13, 1917, the Lady showed the children a vision of hell. After the children caught their breath, she said, "To save souls, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. Many souls will be saved, and peace will prevail if my requests are heeded. If not, Russia will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecutions of the Church." This is the essential request of Fátima. It is not vague, it is not an optional devotion. It is a request that includes a name, a designated actor, and specific conditions. The Lady asked that the Pope, in union with all the bishops of the world, consecrate Russia to her Immaculate Heart, a specific agent performing a specific liturgical act with specific content. And that request went unanswered. Not because no one listened, because following the instructions was far more complicated than it appeared. It required a pope to summon all the bishops of the world for a simultaneous consecration. It required political courage in the midst of wars, communism, and intense diplomatic pressure. It required the Church to have enough faith to act. In 1930, the Bishop of Leiria officially declared the apparitions to be authentic. The message had been approved. The request had still not been fulfilled. Time passed, decades. The Second World War unfolded exactly as the Lady had foretold it would, should the request go unanswered. In 1942, Pope Pius XIV consecrated the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. However, Russia was not mentioned specifically, not in union with all the bishops. The response was incomplete. Sister Lucia, the only surviving shepherd child of the apparitions until 2005, declared for decades that the request made by the Lady had not been fulfilled as asked. The request remained unanswered. A French priest had died in 1716, while the request was still pending, leaving behind a book about Mary that would sit unread for 130 years. In 1920, a young Polish boy was born in a small town called Wadowice, with no idea that he would one day carry both the weight of a forgotten book and that of an unfulfilled request. Providence is never in a hurry, but it never forgets either. France, in the year 1712, a priest named Louis-Marie Grignon de Montfort wrote a work. He was not a well-known priest. No cathedral, no rank, no backing from influential bishops. He was the second son of a modest family from Brittany, one of 17 children. He kept vigil over the dead at night to pay for his studies at the Paris seminary, one of the few activities that brought in any money, since no one else wanted to do it. He arrived in Paris in such poor condition that he fell ill from malnutrition and had to be hospitalized. Everyone was certain he would die. He knew it was not yet his time. After being ordained a priest in 1700, Montfort spent 16 years traveling France on foot, preaching about Mary to the poor, the sick, and the marginalized. Bishops who were jealous of his success banished him from their territories. The great Calvary that Montfort had built with the help of his congregation at the end of a mission was torn down on the orders of King Louis XIV. Upon receiving the news, Montfort declared to the thousands of people present, "If we cannot raise the cross here, let us carry it in our hearts." And he walked away on foot. Montfort published a book in 1712, when he was 39 years old. It was called True Devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary. It was a book about Mary, about what it means to give everything to her, about how devotion to Mary does not compete with Christ, but is a path that leads to him. And in the very manuscript, Montfort included a warning that seemed unlikely. "I clearly foresee that raging beasts will come in fury to tear this little book apart with their diabolical teeth. Or at the very least, they will ensure it remains hidden in the shadows and silence of a chest, preventing it from seeing the light." Montfort foresaw that the book might even disappear. He died on a mission in 1716 at the age of 43. The manuscript vanished. Decades before the French Revolution, to prevent looting, the manuscripts of the communities founded by Montfort were hidden on farms in the surrounding countryside. In a field near a chapel dedicated to St. Michael the Archangel, a box containing the treatise was buried, and there it remained. After the Revolution, no one knew where it was. The memory of the writing faded with the deaths of Montfort's first heirs. 130 years after his death, on April 22, 1842, a librarian priest of the Montfortian community named Pedro Rautero was preparing a homily. He opened a dust-covered chest. Among old deteriorated books, he recognized the founder's handwriting. He ran to the Superior General. The Superior read the opening paragraphs. He called everyone together at a set time. He said simply, "We have found a treasure." The book that was believed to have disappeared was still there, and it was about to transform the life of someone who had not yet been born. Poland, October 1942. Karol Wojtyła, a 22-year-old young man, has been working at the Solvay chemical factory in Krakow for 2 years. The Nazis have invaded Poland. Universities have been shut down. Priests are being persecuted. Being a seminarian is forbidden. Karol asks for permission to attend the clandestine seminary being held in secret inside a building, presenting himself at the entrance of the Cardinal of Krakow's palace that October. He is admitted. In the years that follow, he studies theology in secret, leaves during the day to work at the factory, and returns to the palace at night. He lives in a hidden location with other seminarians under the protection of Cardinal Sapieha. During this period, those years of the basement, the factory, and the occupation, Karol Wojtyła devoted himself to true devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, written by Saint Louis Marie Grignon de Montfort. The book had been recovered in 1842, 100 years earlier. It had been published, spread across Europe, and had finally reached Poland. And there it was, in the hands of a young man who worked days in a factory and studied nights in a palace that had become a clandestine seminary. Wojtyła read it, then read it again, then read it again. Years later, as Pope, he reflected on the book's impact on his life. "I myself in my youth derived great benefit from reading this book, in which I found the answer to my uncertainties." He had feared that devotion to Mary, if it spread too far, might overshadow the primacy of devotion to Christ. "I came to understand that this risk does not arise when one experiences the mystery of Mary in Christ, under the careful guidance of Saint Louis Marie." This is the question many of the faithful carry without being able to put it into words. Isn't praying a great deal to Mary a way of turning away from Jesus? Isn't it going too far? Montfort answered this question clearly and directly, and Wojtyła found in that answer both a purpose for his life and an intellectual resolution. Wojtyła adopted the 2 Latin words totus tuus as his lifelong motto drawn from Montfort's treatise. All yours, an expression of profound devotion to Mary, understood not as a destination, but as a path toward Christ. In 1958, upon being appointed auxiliary bishop of Krakow, he incorporated those 2 words into his episcopal coat of arms. When he was elected pope in 1978, the first Polish pope in history, and the first non-Italian in 455 years, he kept the same 2 words in his papal coat of arms, totus tuus, all yours. A seminarian in a wartime basement, reading a book that was supposed to have vanished, living by the words of a French priest who had been dead for 226 years. He had no idea he was being prepared to fulfill a request made in a pasture in Portugal 25 years before his birth. Let us return to Fátima. As the lady had assured from the very beginning, a sign was promised for October. The apparitions at the Cova da Iria grew gradually from May through September of 1917, occurring on the 13th of each month. Word was spreading. The children had said that the lady would perform a miracle in October so that everyone could believe. a clear and unmistakable miracle, so that no one present could later claim they had seen nothing. On October 13, 1917, approximately 70,000 people gathered at the Cova da Iria. There were believers and there were skeptics. There were the faithful and there were journalists from anti-clerical publications who came to mock and dismiss. One of those journalists was named Avelino de Almeida. He wrote for O Século, the most influential Portuguese newspaper of the era, known for its anti-clerical stance. Avelino de Almeida had published a sarcastic article about the children and their visions just days before. He went to Fátima expecting to find nothing. After a heavy rain had soaked the crowd, the clouds parted at noon, and the sun, visible to the naked eye without causing harm, began to spin on its own axis, casting rays of various colors in every direction: reds, oranges, yellows, greens, and blues. The crowd watched as the fields, the trees, the clothing, and their own faces were flooded with color. Then the sun appeared to plunge toward the earth, moving in a zigzag as though it were about to fall. The crowd dropped to their knees. Many people screamed, many people prayed. It lasted approximately 10 minutes. When it was over, the clothes that had been drenched by the rain were completely dry. The following day, Avelino de Almeida published a report that began with the words, "I saw it. I witnessed the sun shining in extraordinary fashion." It was an anti-clerical journalist who wrote that, a man who had come to disprove it. The phenomenon was seen from dozens of kilometers away by people who had no idea what was happening in Fátima at that moment. In her final apparition, when Lucia asked her once more who she was, she replied, "I am the Lady of the Rosary." This is something many devotees do not know. The full name of Our Lady of Fátima is Our Lady of the Rosary of Fátima. This is because the very last request she made in her final apparition was precisely that, the Rosary. The prayer that Montfort had proclaimed throughout France 2 centuries before. The children had been praying it daily since the very first apparition. The apparitions came to a close on October 13th. The message had been delivered. 70,000 people had witnessed the miracle. The consecration request had been recorded, and the request remained unanswered. Somewhere in Europe, a 2-year-old boy named Karol Wojtyła was taking his first steps. There is one aspect of Fátima that most devotees know about, but do not fully understand: the 3 secrets. Here, the word secret does not mean information kept in hiding. It means revelation, something the lady entrusted to the children that they were only to share at specific times. The first secret concerned the vision of hell that the lady had shown the children in July of 1917. Jacinta, at 7 years old, never fully recovered from that experience. She spent the rest of her brief life, she died at 10 years old, suffering for the conversion of sinners. The second secret was a prophecy. If humanity did not convert, a war even more devastating than the First World War would begin. Russia's errors would spread throughout the world, and there was the request to consecrate it to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The third secret, written and sealed by Sister Lucia in 1944, was produced at her bishop's request. She asked that it not be revealed before 1960. The text was read by Pope John XXIII in 1960. He did not disclose it publicly. It was read by Paul VI in 1963. He did not disclose it publicly either. In 1978, Polish Cardinal Karol Wojtyła was elected Pope, taking the name John Paul II. He was the first Polish Pope in history and the first non-Italian in 455 years. He read the third secret quickly. He did not pay it much attention. The third secret depicted a scene in which a bishop dressed in white walks through a devastated city, passes by the bodies of martyrs, and is struck down by a series of gunshots. On May 13, 1981, 64 years after the lady's first apparition in Fátima, at the same hour, John Paul II survived an assassination attempt in St. Peter's Square. After surgery performed by doctors who doubted he would survive, he woke up in the Gemelli Hospital, and he asked to be brought the final secret. After he read the text, Cardinal Stanisław Dziwisz, the Pope's former personal secretary, recalls that the Pope remained in silence for a considerable time. Then he said simply, 13th of May, one in 1917, another in 1981. The secret spoke of a pope who had survived an assassination attempt. The pope who knew the secret had just survived an assassination attempt. On the same date, without a moment's pause. The bishop dressed in white in the 1944 text was him, a man who had spent his entire life being prepared for this moment, shaped by a 1712 book about total consecration to Mary. It was John Paul II himself who, from his hospital bed with wounds still open, declared aloud, "To you, Mary, I repeat, totus tuus ego sum." All yours, the words of Montfort. Spoken in the hospital where doctors performed surgery without hope. Date, May 13th, 1981, 5:17 in the afternoon. St. Peter's Square is packed. Wednesday is the day of the general audience. John Paul II makes his way through the crowd in his open vehicle, the Pope Mobile, smiling, giving blessings, and embracing children who reach their arms out to him. In Rome, it is a spring afternoon. Mehmet Ali Akça was 23 years old. He was Turkish, a member of a terrorist organization and a fugitive from prison where he had been serving a sentence for murder. He had arrived in Rome 3 days ahead of schedule. There was a plan. He had been sitting in the square writing postcards. Akça stood up and fired at the Pope Mobile from just 4 meters away. John Paul II was hit by bullets in the abdomen, the right elbow and the left index finger. The Pope collapsed inside the vehicle. Dziwisz, his secretary, caught him as he fell. During the 15-minute drive to the Gemelli Hospital, John Paul II whispered softly and steadily in Polish, "My Jesus, my mother." At the hospital, upon briefly regaining consciousness before surgery, he made one request to the doctors, that they leave his brown scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel untouched during the procedure. The operation lasted more than 5 hours. Surgeons removed 55 centimeters of intestine. The bullet passed within millimeters of the main artery. Had it deviated just slightly further, John Paul II would not have survived. Afterward, the lead surgeon, Professor Francesco Cruciti, admitted he had performed the operation without any certainty the patient would make it. Years later, Akça made an enigmatic statement. "I fired from 4 meters away." There was no margin for error, and yet he did not succeed. After his recovery, John Paul II remarked about the incident. One hand fired and another guided the bullet. 5 days after the attack, still hospitalized, during the Angelus prayer in his room, John Paul II publicly declared, "I am praying for the brother who shot me, whom I have sincerely forgiven." 2 years later, at Christmas 1983, he paid a personal visit to Rebibbia prison in Rome, where Akça was being held. They were left alone in a cell for approximately 20 minutes. No one knows what was said. After leaving, John Paul II stated that he had treated his attacker as a brother. 1 year after the attack on May 13, 1982, John Paul II made his first visit to Fátima. He visited the Chapel of the Apparitions, where the Lady had appeared in 1917. He placed at the feet of the image of Our Lady the white sash stained with his blood, which he had been wearing on the day of the attack. He remained in silence for a long time. Then he said to those present, "Could you forget that the event in St. Peter's Square took place on the same day and at the same hour as the first apparition of the Mother of Christ here, more than 60 years ago?" I felt that unmistakable maternal protection. But there was still something left to be done. The consecration of the world to the Immaculate Heart of Mary was performed by John Paul II on March 25, 1984, in St. Peter's Square, in the presence of bishops from throughout the world. On that day, the request made by Our Lady at Fátima in July of 1917 was finally fulfilled. Despite Sister Lucia having reinforced that request over many years, it had gone unanswered for decades. Sister Lucia later confirmed that the act had been carried out as the Lady had asked. On that same date, the Bishop of Leiria Fátima received an object that had belonged to John Paul II. It was the bullet from the attack. On May 13, 1981, John Paul II was struck by a bullet in the abdomen that passed within millimeters of his main artery. After 5 hours of surgery, doctors were able to remove the bullet, despite having little hope the patient would survive. That bullet was received by the Bishop of Fátima and incorporated into the golden crown of the image of Our Lady in the Chapel of the Apparitions in Portugal. It remains there to this day. Those who visit Fátima and look upon the crown can see the bullet set within it. The piece of metal that was meant to kill a pope rests in Mary's crown. Now let us consider the full thread, all at once from the very beginning. In 1712, a priest named Montfort wrote a book about Mary in which he predicted it would be hidden. He died in 1716 at the age of 43. The book vanished for 130 years, buried in a French field. It was recovered in 1842. In 1942, in the basement of a clandestine seminary in Krakow, a young Polish man named Karol Wojtyła read that book and made the words "Totus tuus," all yours, his lifelong motto. That young man was elected Pope in 1978. He was shot in St. Peter's Square on May 13, 1981, the same date and hour as Our Lady of Fátima's first apparition in 1917. He survived. In the hospital, he read the third secret. A year later, he went to Fátima to give thanks. In 1984, he carried out the consecration. Today, the bullet rests in Mary's crown, in the very place where 3 children heard a request in 1917 that went unanswered for decades. The bullet is there on May 13th. All who call upon her with faith receive the intercession of Our Lady of Fátima. If this story moved you, share in the comments the name of someone for whom you would like to ask her intercession today. It can be just one name. Let us unite in prayer, asking for the intercession of Our Lady of Fátima. She chose a city with an Arabic name. She chose 3 children who did not yet know how to read. She chose a pasture in the middle of a world war. She chose a time when Portugal had banned religious education in schools, when Europe was at war, and when no one expected anything from a small village of 2,500 souls. She always chooses this way. Not the most prominent place, not the most qualified people, not the most favorable moment. She chooses the place and the time, only she knows why. And what she asked for in that field in 1917 was simple, yet profound. Prayer, penance, and the offering of the world to her Immaculate Heart. Not because she needs power, but because she is a mother, and she understands what her children are not yet able to understand. Through Russia, she could see that a conflict was on the horizon. Through a future pope, who would later read in a hospital the secret she had entrusted to a 10-year-old girl, through a bullet that would harm no one, and that would one day adorn her crown. She saw all of this in 1917 in a pasture, where 3 children knelt in prayer. This is the image of Our Lady of Fátima, not an image simply placed on a shelf, not a devotional title added to a collection, a mother who came with an urgent message and who continues interceding for all who call upon her. In one of her letters, Sister Lucia, who devoted 97 years to preserving and sharing this message, wrote, "Our Lady did not promise an end to the trials of life. She promised to come one and to bring it to completion." From the bed where his survival was uncertain, John Paul II declared, "To you, Mary, I repeat, totus tuus ego sum, all yours." This is the devotion Fátima calls for, not the kind that comes and goes, the candle lit only when things are calm, the devotion of the hospital bed, the devotion of the wartime basement, the devotion of the pasture in the rain, with 70,000 people on their knees, before something their eyes could see but their words could not yet express. The Church recalls that the first apparition took place on May 13th. And in that crown in Portugal, the bullet remains, a concrete, verifiable testimony that she was present in a moment when no one should have survived. She is here now. In the middle of this life, this week, this moment, Our Lady of Fátima, Lady of the Rosary, Mother of the Immaculate Heart, who appeared in a city bearing an Arabic name to show the world that there was hope, pray for us.